Hi, I'm Alex.Nunemaker, and welcome to my homebuyer seminar. This is not only for first-time homebuyers, but for anybody looking to buy a home. I'm going to go over the flow of the process, how to best prepare, but most importantly, I want you to rely upon my experience so you can get the home that you want. The home buying process always boils down to the same 5 basic steps. And the first step is the most important, but unfortunately this is the one that usually most people will skip. And this is game planning with your team. And your team is yourself, your lender, that would be me, and your realtor. And together we'll identify if there's anything that would hinder you from getting the home you want. And we'll game plan whether you need to improve your credit or come up with a down payment savings plan or anything else that would stand in between you and getting the home that you want. Most people will unfortunately skip this step altogether. They'll put this off, and then they'll see a home online unexpectedly, and then becomes a mad scramble. And this is the difference between being stressful versus successful in home buying. The earlier you start the process, the easier it is. This is especially important when you're looking to sell your home. The earlier you start that process, your realtor can advise you on what you need to do to prep your home for maximum value, and then I can come up with numbers that will help you understand how the net from your current sale will impact your next home. A lot of people will put off this process because of these common concerns. And one is that they're afraid that having their credit pull will somehow impact their credit drastically. This will not impact your score 20 or 30 points, but it is crucial that I pull a credit report for you so that we can run accurate numbers. Secondly, just because you're putting in an application does not mean that you are obligated to take out a loan at that time. This just gets your basic information to me so that we know exactly what we're working with. Finally, there's also the fear that if you start this process too early, that you will somehow have to start this process over when it does come time to buy your home. Technically, a pre-approval is good for 120 days. However, if it extends beyond that, that doesn't mean that you start from the beginning. We just stay in communication and we'll refresh any documents that have expired, things typically like pay stubs or bank statements. Once we've done all the planning, the next step is the most fun, and this is the home search. Once you've done all that planning, you know exactly where your numbers are, your realtor can laser focus in on exactly the area that you want to be in so that you can find the home that you want without viewing homes unnecessarily that either are out of your budget or don't fit your criteria. By knowing exactly what your budget is beforehand, your realtor can actually identify a home for you faster because we know exactly the criteria of a home that you're looking for. Once you've identified a home that you'd like to buy, next comes making an offer. Your realtor will submit an offer on your behalf that will specify the purchase price and any seller help if you would like to have the seller cover any closing costs and any appropriate contingencies. Accompanying that letter will be my pre-approval letter, and this communicates to the seller how well qualified you are and how far along in the process you are. So what does a seller look for when they're reviewing offers? They're going to take a look at not only your purchase price, but they're also going to take a look at the program you're utilizing, how much seller help you're asking for, and other items like home inspection, appraisal, and home to sell contingencies. However, one of the biggest factors they're also going to take a look at is the strength of your pre-approval letter. You can either be pre-qualified, which just means that you've filled out an application, but no verification has been done. You can be pre-approved, which is what I highly recommend at least doing. This means that not only have you filled out an application, but you have provided all documentation to back up your application. Things like pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, and bank statements. Another option that might be available to you to accompany your pre-approval letter is to have a loan commitment already in place. Typically, a loan commitment isn't offered until you are under contract. But we have also done other checks such as pulling tax transcripts, officially verified employment, and done other background checks. With these items in hand, an underwriter can sign off on your loan and makes your offer very competitive. One important factor in which offer gets accepted is how soon that you can settle. If you are a prepared borrower and allowed us to view these items ahead of time, we can close quickly, which gives you a competitive advantage against other offers in the market. If the seller accepts the offer that you put in, you are now under contract. And this is where a lot of things will happen very quickly. You want to be prepared for all the upfront costs that come with this. There's the cost of an appraisal of the property, which is usually around $500. The seller will typically want an earnest money deposit or an EMD, which could be anywhere from 0.5% to 1% of the total value of the property. And you will also be paying for any home inspections that you've requested, which can range from a couple $100s to a couple $1,000s. At this time, we will typically have you sign your mortgage disclosures and you will lock in your interest rate. At this time, we'll also update any documents that might be outdated at that point, things like pay stubs and bank statements. Once your mortgage disclosures are signed, we as the lender will also order an appraisal of the property. As we process your loan, we will eventually get to the very happy day, which is your settlement or closing day. This is where the settlement or title company will officially transfer ownership into your name and the property is yours. Regardless of which program you ultimately end up utilizing, there are 3 keys to qualifying for a mortgage loan: credit, income, and assets. And all 3 of these together will determine how much you're pre-approved for and what programs are going to be available to you. The first major factor in qualifying for a loan is credit. And this is the one that most people are at least familiar with. Your credit score, however, is just one factor of your credit. Typically, we want to see that your score is at least 620, but ideally over 640. And obviously, the higher it is, the lower interest rate and lower program fees could be available to you. However, we don't just look at your score. What is also just as important is your payment history, if there is a pattern of delinquency, and if you have enough trade lines or credit accounts built up to show a track history of utilizing credit. One item to be aware of is to remove disputes from your credit report. When you dispute an account, this temporarily removes it from the credit scoring algorithm, and when you apply for a mortgage loan, any credit disputes need to be removed so we can pull an accurate credit report. Your credit report is essentially a list of your monthly debts, and we will use these debts in relationship to your income to determine what your debt to income ratio is. Your debt to income ratio, or DTI, is a major factor in how much you will qualify for. This is the relationship between your monthly debts and your gross monthly income, which is our second key factor in how much you'll qualify for. When it comes to your income, we will typically go off of your gross income before taxes are taken out. The key thing with your income is that it must be documentable, meaning that it shows up on your tax returns, and we must also show that it is stable. Other items such as bonus, commissions, or any other income source that could fluctuate, typically you need to have a 2-year history of documentable income so we can average that out over that 2-year time period. This also applies to self-employed borrowers. For self-employed borrowers, it is almost mandatory that you're going to need a 2-year history of self-employed income. But rather than going off just gross income, we'll take a look at either the businesses or your own personal gross minus your expenses. Your income will be determined by your net income after expenses are written off. Finally, with your income, we have to show that it will continue. So if you have any plans on changing employment or changing your pay structure, be sure to consult with me, your lender, to make sure that this won't impact your ability to qualify later. As I had mentioned before, debt to income ratio, puts together the first two factors, your credit report and your income together. And this will determine how much of a payment you can qualify for. When you are qualified for a mortgage loan, you're actually not qualified based upon a purchase price. You are qualified for a total payment. You can handle a certain debt load, and typically we want to see this below 45% of whatever your gross income is. As I had mentioned before, your debt to income ratio, or DTI, will determine how much you can qualify for. And contrary to popular belief, a high credit score doesn't necessarily qualify you for more, but it's about how much of a debt load you can handle. So a high earner with low debts can carry on a higher mortgage payment, and vice versa. You could be a very high earner, but if you have a high debt load, that will constrict the amount of the monthly payment that you can qualify for. Finally, the third factor in qualifying for a mortgage loan is assets, or what you have in the bank. When you apply for a mortgage loan, you will show us how much you currently have saved in checking, savings, money market. You can also show, and I recommend showing, retirement accounts, even if you're not going to utilize it for the purchase, because this shows that you have money in reserves. Some applicants are planning on getting gift funds from a family member, which is okay. However, it's important that you understand that the relative will need to provide documentation to us in order for us to consider those funds. The relative will need to show us a gift letter that they will sign that confirms that the funds are to be used for the purchase. They will need to document those funds transferring from their account into your account, and they may need to provide their own full bank statements. So for that reason, I always recommend having the conversation with the relative before they transfer funds to make sure that they are okay with providing that documentation. Finally, when it comes to providing your bank statements as well as all other documents, it's important that you do not give screenshots. We always have to use an official bank statement. However, you can usually download an official bank statement directly from your bank online. And now I wanted to give a brief overview of the basic financing programs available to you in today's market. There are 4 major programs: conventional, FHA, USDA, and VA. Each program has its own advantages and disadvantages, so there's not necessarily a better or worse program, but there is a right program for you, and my job is to match you up with that program. The first major program is conventional financing. If you're a first-time homebuyer, you have the ability to put down as little as 3% for your down payment. And for non-first-time homebuyers, typically you will need to put down at least 5%. You may have heard that you have to put 20% down for a conventional loan, which is not true. However, if you are putting less than 20% down, you will pay a fee called private mortgage insurance, or PMI. This is a fee that could be collected monthly into your mortgage payment, or it could be paid in one lump sum at the time of settlement. A conventional loan is very credit score sensitive, so typically you would want to see someone with a high credit score in a conventional loan. Next, we will move on to government loan products. This would be USDA, FHA, and VA. And government loan products are typically not credit score sensitive, and they are designed to foster home ownership within the United States. Unlike a conventional loan, the amount of PMI or upfront fees or monthly fees that you pay will not vary depending upon your credit score. Instead, these fees are fixed in terms of who will pay what depending upon the program. The first government program is FHA. This is a good program for first-time homebuyers. It allows you to purchase a home with 3.5% down. It is typically good for someone who has between a 640 and a 700 credit score, and is also very lenient if you have a past bankruptcy or a foreclosure. The second program is a USDA loan, and this is a very affordable program because it has no down payment requirement. However, it does have restrictions. Your entire household must be under the income limit set by the county. So even if someone is not on the loan, the entire household's income must be under that limit. This program also has geographic restrictions. USDA publishes a website where you can look at which areas are USDA eligible or not, but typically it needs to be in a rural area. Finally, there's the VA loan, which is a loan that I am very passionate about, and this is financing that is available to those who have served in the military. This program is very affordable. It has no down payment requirement. You just need to be an eligible veteran or active duty service member. If you're not sure whether you would qualify for this program or not, typically I would need to see a copy of your DD-214 Member Copy 4, and I can check to see whether you are eligible or not for a VA loan. This program has very low interest rates, no monthly fees, which makes your payment very affordable. No matter which program you ultimately end up utilizing, each one wants to make sure that the property is safe for you, and it's going to meet your basic health and safety codes. Each program will have its own twist on this, but in general, they want to make sure that the property has clean running water, that it has a heat source, typically that it has at least a stove, and there's nothing that jumps out that would be a major health or safety concern. Things like exposed electrical wiring, a roof that is on the verge of collapsing, or mold. Now, what if one of the properties you're interested in buying does have a health and safety concern, or you would like to build in renovations into that loan? In that case, there are sub-programs that you can use that are renovation loans that might be an FHA renovation loan or a conventional renovation loan. Again, each loan program will have its own twist on this, but there are some basic characteristics of a renovation loan. First, your down payment will be based upon the purchase price plus the amount of renovations you want to put into that property. Secondly, there is no self-help. So if you think that you're going to be on the next TLC renovation show, I'm sorry to disappoint, but a licensed contractor will need to do those renovations. Typically, most down payment assistance programs will not allow a renovation component to be included into the financing. If you are short on cash, or if you're looking to utilize a down payment assistance program, typically a renovation loan program is not a good fit for you. While a renovation loan will allow you to put in the work that could increase the value of the property, there are some added expenses. So it is one thing to keep in mind with a renovation loan is that expenses can add up fairly quickly. A quick word on bank-owned properties. You might see these listed as a foreclosure or as a short sale. First, a short sale. A short sale means that someone is currently living in that property or still owns it. However, they need to sell short of what is owed on that property from the bank, and thus they need the bank's permission to sell what they're looking to sell it for. Because a bank's permission is needed before that transaction can go through, these types of transactions tend to drag on. They can take months and maybe even years to complete. Next are foreclosures. A foreclosure is where the bank who had the loan on that property had to repossess the home from whoever was living there. At this point, they are looking to relist that property on the market. Foreclosures tend to attract people who are looking for a deal. However, it is important to remember that the house must meet your basic health and safety codes. So if a bank owns that property and they are not willing to make the repairs, this might be a better suited property for someone who is looking to buy it in cash. Finally, I also wanted to talk about down payment assistance programs. Down payment assistance programs can be a great way for someone who is otherwise qualified, they have good credit, they have stable income, but the one thing that is missing from them is the ability to come up with a down payment. Typically, a down payment assistance program is offered by the local state or municipality in which the property is located in. However, a word of caution about down payment assistance programs and these are things that typically do not make their way into fancy marketing materials, is that there's no such thing as a free lunch. While those down payment assistance programs can help bridge the gap for someone who is short funds for closing, they typically will come with a higher interest rate, and you also want to be aware of what happens with that down payment assistance. Is it a silent lien on the property that will need to be repaid later? Is it a grant that will be forgiven? Or will it have tax ramifications for you later? Finally, down payment assistance programs are typically income-based. So you may or may not qualify for one of these programs. However, if one of them is beneficial for you, I'll let you know at the time of pre-approval. Let's take a minute to talk about the costs of buying a home. There's a lot of different terminology that gets thrown around, so I like to take this time to break down exactly what each term means so you can understand it. The first major cost that most people are aware of is the down payment. The down payment is your investment into the property. So for instance, if you are buying a $400,000 property and you are coming up with a 10% down payment, that means that you're going to be coming up with at least $40,000 and you will be getting a loan for $360,000. This is not the same as closing costs or your escrows, which are separate. The second major cost is your closing costs. These are one-time fees that are paid at the time of settlement because you are purchasing a property. Some examples of these things would be lender underwriting and processing fees, appraisal, title fees, title search, and transfer taxes depending upon the municipality that you're buying in. Finally, we have escrows or prepaids. There are other recurring items that you will continue to pay after settlement, things like homeowners insurance and property taxes. And again, depending upon the municipality that you're buying in and how they collect property taxes will determine how much we need at the time of settlement. But as a general rule of thumb, you will typically need 13 months of homeowners insurance, and you could need anywhere from 5 to 12 months of property taxes. Knowing how much these items are going to be for your purchase is going to be crucial. Part of my game planning process is to prepare you not only for down payment, but also show you what typical closing costs and escrows will be so you know these items before you put an offer on a property. I also wanted to take some time to explain how interest rates and points work. On any given day within each program, there's not just one interest rate that's available, but there are many interest rates. And which one you decide will determine how much in points you pay. As you can see in this example, there are interest rates in which you are paying no points, and you can elect to buy down your interest rate and pay points in exchange for a lower interest rate over time. And whether or not it makes sense to pay those points will depend upon the property that you're buying. How long do you intend to live in that home or keep that property? How much will your payment be lowered? And at what point will you break even on that investment? These are all interest rate options that I will review with you at the time that you're locking in your interest rate. It is also important in my example to notice that there is not just one interest rate, and you will see an expensive option for you as you go down the interest rate spectrum. And this explains why you will see those too good to be true online rates where it looks like there's a low interest rate, but really what they're doing is covering up a bunch of points or extra closing costs for you. The seller can cover certain costs, mainly the closing costs and any escrows. The one thing that they cannot cover is your down payment. Whether or not the seller will accept your offer if you're asking for seller credits is a whole nother story. The seller will review your offer in terms of ultimately what your offer will net them, meaning the purchase price minus seller credits equals what that offer really means to them. If you are in a highly competitive market, it is unlikely that you will get an offer accepted where you are requesting seller credits because there are lots of other offers in which people are not requesting seller credits. However, if you find yourself getting into a property early or you are buying in a non-competitive market, you may be able to request a seller credit. Congratulations, you've made it to the end of my video, and we've covered a lot of information in a short amount of time. We've covered how the process should go, and a lot of commonly asked questions, but you might have some specific questions, so I encourage you to reach out to me directly. If you'd like to get pre-approved right now, it's very easy. You can submit an application online and have your pre-approval documents ready, and I can come up with an analysis for you. And remember, it's never too early to get pre-approved. The earlier we start talking, the easier it will be later.